Well, thanks for having me here. As Nancy said, I'm an engineer. I'm not a public speaker, so I apologize in advance. But I'm just going to start off with a story. A few weeks ago, I was on my way to Edmonton with 3 of my colleagues. And as we're driving, my truck breaks down. So I pull over the side of the road. And one of my colleagues is a mechanical engineer. He's like, the way it quit, probably something with the engine. Let me have a look. We'll be back up and running anytime soon. The other colleague was an electrical engineer. He's like, no, that beeping, the sounds, must be something with the wiring. Let me check, and I'll get you back up and running. And my other colleague was a computer engineer. He's like, how about this? Let's all get out of the vehicle, get back in, and then let's see if it works. So for the presentation, I'm going to go through some highlights of an integrated rainwater management plan. This was done to gain a better understanding of what low-impact development is and how municipalities can start moving towards using it in new and retrofit developments. It's a high-level academic study, and I hope you'll gain some insight on LID. So what is an integrated rainwater management plan? And why does the Red Deer River Basin need one? Why do cities and municipalities, all the counties, towns, why do they need this? How can the municipalities implement this IRMP? Where would be locations or projects that these municipalities can incorporate this and start to apply it? And where do we go from here? And I'll briefly look at a potential pilot project study. So what is an integrated rainwater management plan? This is trying to protect the stream corridors and the receiving water bodies and preventing drainage-related problems while still enabling development of the land and redevelopment. Locally, there's been a need to address these types of issues and to look at an approach for managing stormwater with a growing urban environment. Municipalities want to see improved quality of water that comes from stormwater runoff and ultimately ends up in the Red Deer River. And locally here, the city of Red Deer has done this environmental master plan, and looking at something like this will just better help them understand and complement this environmental master plan, providing insight on stormwater and how it affects the environment. Every city and town and county can adopt similar plans in their own way to help improve the stormwater quality in their local locations. So this integrated rainwater management, it recognizes the faults of how we do stormwater now. We need to have a fundamental shift. It has to occur in order to prevent stormwater from running off, and then so we need to prevent it rather than manage it, as we're currently doing now. So some of the changes that we need to see, rather than solve drainage problems, we need to try and prevent the drainage problems from happening. Rather than designing a drainage system, try to have a full ecosystem. Rather than development being engineer-driven, have an integrated solution that drives future projects. And rather than a pipe and a ditch or strictly a dual drainage system, let's try and mimic a pre-development as it is in the upstream and downstream locations. And then rather relying on the end-of-pipe BMPs to solve all the problems, try a complete watershed planning strategy. With an IRMP, there needs to be strategies and techniques used that will specifically look at the following: land use, water quality, volume control, and cold climate. Upstream land usage changes typically are the starting point for any degradation of streams and downstream drainage course. To provide effective water quality improvement, one only needs to treat the day-to-day storms, because this is where most of the pollutants come from the stormwater events. Your big storm events, all the pollutants have been washed off the soil already, and you're just controlling flooding. Volume control is gaining popularity throughout our province with the concept of reducing long-term volumes that are discharged to the natural environment. Central Alberta doesn't currently have any volume controls, but I know the city of Calgary does. And Central Alberta, and specifically Red Deer and surrounding communities, experience cold climate. And what we consider cold climate is characterized by significant snowfall, below freezing temperatures, and prolonged freeze-thaw cycles. The effects of cold climate on stormwater are numerous. Stormwater runoff, buildup of pollutants, and operation and maintenance of our infrastructure is all affected by cold weather. So why do municipalities in the Red Deer Basin need something like this? The purpose of this IRMP is to create a clear picture of a desired outcome that will facilitate a broad understanding of integrated solutions. As mentioned with the City of Red Deer in this environmental master plan, it touches on the stormwater runoff. In order to achieve the goals of this big plan, an IRMP would focus on key issues associated with runoff and providing solutions on how to improve the quality of water from stormwater. As we've seen in Calgary and Edmonton, they've started reducing the quantity of stormwater runoff and increasing the quality by implementing these LIDs. So here in the Red Deer River Basin, there's approximately 12,000 kilometers of streams. The Red Deer River itself is 724 kilometers long, with just over 48,000 square kilometers in the Watershed Basin. The big rivers like the Bow River in the south, the North Saskatchewan in the north, and the Red Deer, they're impacted, but not to the same scale as if you look at the smaller streams, because it's the smaller streams that if you dump a bunch of water and pollutants in there, they're going to be affected a lot more. These big rivers are affected because all the streams drain towards the rivers. And so as you can see, I don't know if you can see on this picture, but as we go downstream of the Red Deer River, the quality gets less and less and less. And that's because of all these other streams contributing and degrading and reducing the quality. So these small streams in our watershed, they play a very significant role in what we need to do. Now, with changing the ways that we normally do stormwater and trying to do better, it raises questions that I'm sure lots of you have, lots of municipalities have. And what happens with impervious soils that we have around here? Where does the sand and salt go that we put on our roads in the winter, and how is it dealt with? It freezes here for long periods of time in the winter, and how does this affect the runoff? LIDs have been done in many other places, but are we different here with our climates? So we got to look at that. How would design guidelines be updated in order to encourage and implement these new designs and strategies? And how do we engage the public in order for them to learn how they can help? Some of the potential problems with the way we currently do the stormwater drainage is directly connected to any hardscape area, parking lot, roads, driveways, drain directly to catch basins and into the storm pipes. This creates high TSS loadings which discharge the receiving water bodies, streams, and rivers. A lot of the newer systems go through wet ponds, which definitely help control the flow rates and treat the runoff. But some go directly to the streams. An IRMP would help municipalities disconnect the hardscape from the pipes and the storm systems. And then other potential problems with the current system is trying to remove the sediments in the storm. And it's been shown that the further the sediments get down your system, the more and more expensive it is to remove these sediments. So if we can remove them at the source prior to that end of the pipe system, it's going to save us a lot of money in the future. So how can municipalities implement the ideas from an IRMP? There's no cookie cutter solution to stormwater runoff. In order to develop an effective IRMP, there needs to be strategies and techniques to accomplish specific objectives. Some key things that need to be looked at for every project include space requirements and aesthetics. LIDs need to be placed in strategic areas that won't be an eyesore to the public. Operation and maintenance. The people who work for the towns and the counties don't want to deal with LIDs that require a ton of work. Design and construction. In order for developers to work with LIDs and implement them into their designs, they need to be able to understand and build them without having 12 years experience of university. Water quantity and quality control. LIDs need to address the amount of water that runs off the surface and the amount of sediment they remove. Otherwise, these LIDs are just poor-looking landscape art that cost a lot of money. And since we have actual winter in Red Deer compared to like Florida, we have to have these LIDs that will function in below freezing temperatures. Every LID is not suitable for everywhere, so one has to look at different ones and how they apply to each municipality, and we need to decide what would be best for us. Created this matrix that kind of goes through different parameters, and it's showing us like which ones could be used around here and which ones just aren't worth looking at for right now. And just because I say don't look at them doesn't mean throw them out and never use them. In some cases they would be good. But the 7 that I've come up with here are a better planning strategy, rainwater reuse, absorbent landscaping, tree trenches, bioretention areas, vegetated swales, and oil and grit separators. So where can municipalities use these LIDs? They can be pretty much incorporated anywhere. Some will be more difficult than others, obviously. And based on who maintains them, private versus municipalities will dictate where they go and how much of them. Some LIDs will be more appropriate to certain areas versus others. In order to properly select which LID to use is a site-by-site basis. As I said before, there's no cookie cutter, there's no use this every single time. So many factors play into how these LIDs are used, which could include, but not limited to, soil suitability, depth to water table, depth to bedrock, topography, drainage area, and site usage. The best designs usually will incorporate a number of these LIDs, which we call a treatment train, and they complement each other then. So just looking at some of these things that I talked about before, so in the land use, so better planning strategies is a great way to introduce LID. Because of this approach, it's used from day one on a project. Before any work is done, any design, if you have this view of trying to create this or mimic the pre-development, you're going to hit the ground running in trying to create a holistic development that mimics this pre-development. And it will accomplish much more than trying to retrofit these things in at a later date. This is focused mainly on land use and creating an effective outline plan that will incorporate as much of the existing natural ground as possible, rather than spread the lots of residential development over an entire quarter section, reduce the road size and clump lots together, and then that way you can maintain some of the vegetation that was there previously. Water quality. There's many LIDs that focus on trying to eliminate sediments and improve water quality. Disconnecting the hardscape from the storm system is a key to obtaining good results for this approach. By having the runoff from the pavement and the hardscape travel to a pervious area, whether it's grass, swales, it will greatly increase the quality and reduce the quantity of this runoff from the rain. Volume control. One of the best ways to control volume is to reuse the water for other things. It's a growing solution here in Alberta, specifically in the city of Calgary, and central Alberta doesn't need to look far to gain understanding on how to do this. And cold climate. The whole province experiences winter. The northern will experience it different than the southern parts, but experience can be gained throughout Western Canada. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We want to focus on what's been done, look at what that is, and incorporate that into central Alberta here and the Red Deer River Basin. If cold climate can be planned for in advance, rather than trying to react to it with these LIDs, it will go a lot further that way. So where do we go from here? And how do we take this to the next step? One of the key elements of an IRMP is to point us in the next direction. So what we did is we looked at a generic development area that could represent any given subdivision, did a desktop pilot study on it. This generic development was roughly a quarter section. It had some grade to it, had a natural wetland on it that we were keeping. And this was done only as an academic study. certain areas of the development were looked at in detail to determine where the best places throughout a development were to put these LIDs. Several different types of land use were used to get overall strategy for a typical development, which included a downtown core, a commercial area, low, medium, and high density residential. We looked at school sites and a private site and a community center. And for educational purposes, and not to exhaust the use of LIDs for each land use, only a few different ones were looked at. And from this high level cost estimate that we did, we looked at treating 20% of the area with LIDs. And what we found is that compared to a base case development, what it would cost, treating this 20% of the land worked out to roughly the same dollar amount for the developer to put it in. And doing some research, we actually found in the States that they claim that creating these LID systems are actually much cheaper than the traditional way. So again, where do we go from here? Like I said before, we don't have to go far for looking for what's been done. There's studies throughout the province that we can gain a lot from. The province is moving in the right direction, and I look forward to being part of it.